I'm Beatriz Montes de Oca. I am a Collin County student. I am reading a book for Banned Books Week. I am reading The Call of the Wild by Jack London. 3 miles away, he came upon a fresh trail that sent his neck, hair rippling and bristling. It led straight towards camp and John Thornton. Buck hurried on, swiftly and stealthily, every nerve straining and tense, alert to the multitudinous detail which told a story, all but the end. His nose gave him a varying description of the passage of the life on the heels of which he was traveling. He remarked the pregnant silence of the forest. The bird life had flitted. The squirrels were hiding. One only he saw, a sleek gray fellow, flattened against a gray dead limb so that he seemed a part of it, a woody excrescence upon the wood itself. As Buddy slid along with the obscureness of a gliding shadow, his nose was jerked suddenly to the side as though a positive force had gripped it and pulled it. He followed the new scent into the thicket and found Nig. He was lying on his side, dead where he had dragged himself, an arrow protruding, head and feathers, from either side of his body. 100 yards further on, Buck came upon one of the sled dogs Thornton had bought in Dawson. This dog was thrashing about in a death struggle, directly on the trail, and Buck passed around him without stopping. From the camp came a faint sound of many voices, rising and falling in a sing-song chant. Belling forward to the edge of the clearing, he found Hounds, laying on his face, feathered with arrows like a porcupine. At the same instant, Buck peered out where the spruce bough lodge had been and saw what made his hair leap straight up on his neck and shoulders. A gust of overpowering rage swept over him. He did not know that he growled, but he growled aloud with a terrible ferocity. For the last time in his life, he allowed passion to usurp cunning and reason, and it was because of his great love for John Thornton that he lost his head. The Yeehats were dancing around the wreckage of the spruce bough lodge when they heard the fearful roaring and saw rushing upon them an animal like of which they had never seen before. It was Buck, like a hurricane of fury, hurling himself upon them in a frenzy to destroy. He sprang at the foremost man. It was the chief of the Yeehats, ripping the throat wide until the rent jugular sprouted forward a fountain. He did not pause to worry about the victim, but ripping and passing, with the next bound tearing wide the throat of the second man. There was no withstanding him. He plunged about in their very midst, tearing and rending, destroying in constant and terrific motion, which defied the arrows they discharged at him. In fact, so inconceivably rapid were his movements, and so closely were the Indians tangled together, that they shot one another with the arrows, and one young hunter, hurling a spear at Buck in midair, drove it through the chest of another hunter with such force that the point broke through the skin on the back and stood out beyond. Then a panic seized the Yeehats, and they fled in terror to the woods, proclaiming as they fled in the advent of evil spirit. Truly, Buck was the fiend incarnated, raging at their heels and dragging them down like deer as they raced through the trees. It was a fateful day for the Yeehats. They scattered far and wide over the country. It was not till a week later that the last of the survivors gathered together in a lower valley and counted their losses. As for Buck, wearying of the pursuit, he returned to the desolated camp. He found Pete where he had been killed in his blankets in first moment of surprise. Thornton's desperate struggle was fresh written on the earth, and Buck scented every detail of it down to the edge of a deep pool. By the edge, head and 4 feet in the water, lay Skeet, faithful to the last. The pool itself, muddy and discolored from the sluice boxes, effectually hid what it contained, and it contained John Thornton. For Buck followed his trace into the water from which no trace led away. All day Buck brooded by the pool or roamed relentlessly about the camp. Death, a cessation of movement as a passing out away from the lives of the living. He knew John Thornton was dead. It left a great void in him, somewhat akin to hunger, but a void which ached, and which food could not fill. At times, when he paused to contemplate the carcasses of the Yeehats, he forgot the pain of it. At such times he was aware of the great pride in himself, a pride greater than any he had yet experienced. He killed a man, the noblest game of all, and he killed in the face of the law of club and fang. He sniffed the bodies curiously. They had died so easily. It was harder to kill a husky dog than them. They were no match at all, were it not for the arrows and spears and clubs. Thenceforward, he would be unafraid of them, except when they bore in their hands arrows and spears and clubs.